I'm Gabriel Morency for Sports Interaction. Well, college football is finally back, baby, and we're as happy as Paris Hilton after her first big fat line of the night. Now, everybody is focusing in on this Boise State-Virginia Tech matchup on Monday night, and rightfully so. Boise State are playing for the national championship on Monday night. They can't win it, but they sure as hell can lose it if they don't beat the Virginia Tech Hokies. It's going to be a great football game. I think it's going to be a close game, but ultimately, I like Kellen Moore and company. Kellen Moore could win the Heisman Trophy this year, but he plays for Boise State. Boise State are probably going to run the table, but it won't be enough to play the BCS National Championship game. Hard for me to say this as a Michigan Wolverine fan, but I think the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to be the best team in college football this year. Now, I like Boise State to get it done, but let's take a look at TCU. TCU, similar to Boise State, they're kind of the BCS outsiders. They're looking to crash the party, and they're looking to start against Oregon State, the Beavers. Coach Mike Riley always loves to start the season off tough. No, I like TCU a lot. They got a great defense, and Andy Dalton has really developed over the years as quarterback of the Horned Frogs. That's what I love about college football. The cool names, the Horned Frogs, the Texas Christian Horned Frogs are going to be a great football team. They might go undefeated this year, although I think the Utah Utes are going to knock them off later in the year, but we'll get to that later in the year. I think Oregon State can hang around. Oregon State have a vicious, mean, street, prison, tough defense. The Rogers brothers are going to give TCU fits. I think that Oregon State can hang around in this football game. TCU is going to be a better football team than Oregon State, but it's a lot of points to be laying in week one. We're going to be taking a look chomp with the Oregon State Beavers. Now, let's take a look at Jake Locker. Now, I really hope that Jake Locker doesn't get hurt this year. So many times, athletes are criticized for only thinking about themselves and thinking about money. Yeah, truth be told, what are you thinking about right now? What am I talking about right now? Trying to make us all money, right? It's all about money. The world's all about money. Why is it going to be any different with athletes? But Jake Locker could have went to the National Football League, and he probably would have been a top 10 selection in the draft. He's that good. But he decided to go back. He wants to make a name for himself and the Washington Huskies. He wants to play in a big-time bowl game with Coach Steve Sarkisian. I like the Washington Huskies a lot this year, guys. And I like the Washington Huskies a lot this weekend against BYU as well. Now, generally, BYU is not a team you want to bet against when they're playing up there in the altitude of Utah. Now, BYU starting a new quarterback. What does that mean when it's BYU? BYU freshmen are like 113 years old. They're older. They're older than Yoda. So I don't know what freshman quarterback actually means for BYU after their missions. Truth be told, their quarterbacks, and their players are generally 24, 25 years old. But I think Washington has what it takes to hang around in what I think is going to be a great classic week one West Coast contest. I think there's going to be a lot of points scored in this football game. Now, there's some great games on the board collegiately, but the National Football League preseason has mercifully come to an end. And listen, I've been called a lot of things, but one thing I am not is a liar. And generally, I love the National Football League preseason, but man, I got my ass handed to me this time around. I'm really looking forward to the start of the regular season. Everyone's talking about this New Orleans Saint Minnesota Viking contest on Thursday night. And I think this game's a little bit tough. The spread's a little bit high, but I'm looking at the futures, and I love the New Orleans Saints to win their division this year. The Saints aren't getting a lot of respect considering how good they are, and they're defending Super Bowl champions. There's something about Coach Payton. There's something about Drew Brees. I don't think complacency is going to settle in for the New Orleans Saints. I think the Saints are the team to beat once again, and I'm not going to take them to win the Super Bowl, but I'll tell you what, I look at the numbers, and I think it's a great number for the New Orleans Saints to win the NFC South. The Falcons will really be the only real competition, and the Falcons, I think the Falcons are still a year or two away, with all due respect to Matt Ryan. Now, speaking of college football, you can't talk about college football without talking about the Florida Gators, right? I like the Florida Gators to absolutely smash Miami of Ohio, but that's not what I'm talking about right now. Former Florida Gator quarterback Chris Leak, who won a national championship as the starter, I might add, not Tim Tebow. Chris Leak is the starter. Chris Leak gets the start for the Montreal Alouettes as Anthony Calvillo is out for a couple of weeks. And if you take a look at CFL futures, the Alouettes might be worth a look. Anthony Calvillo is fine. He's going to be back in a couple of weeks' time. The Alouettes aren't rushing him back. They know that they're going to be fine without him. Now, Chris Leak can probably win football games for the Alouettes. You want to be laying double-digit points. BC are brutal. What does the BC and BC Lions stand for? Bad club, blown coverage, I don't know. Like, what can you say about Wally Buono's team? It doesn't matter who the quarterback is. They can't get it done. But call me crazy. I've been called a hell of a lot worse. There's something about this CFL weekend. The Labor Day weekend is always a crazy one. And I think we're going to see a lot of underdogs hang around and maybe even win outright. Now, generally, I don't like to use the word classic in the city of Hamilton in the same sentence. And with all due respect to citizens of the Hammer, you know it's true. You know it's true. And I don't know if it's a Labor Day classic. This is some ugly, ugly, ugly football that they play in the Steel City on Labor Day when they annually host the Toronto Argonauts. But this, truthfully, is one of the best rivalries in all of football and all of sports. There's a lot of bad blood. I always did find it strange, though, that Hamilton Tiger Cats are big Toronto Maple Leaf fans, but they hate the Argonauts. But, hey, that's another story. Hamilton went into the Rogers Centre a couple of weeks ago, and they got a big W, and the world was all in love with Jim Barker and the Argonauts. I think the Argonauts hang around in this Labor Day, quote-unquote, classic. Now, let's wrap things up with a little Major League Baseball. They say the CFL season doesn't officially start until after Labor Day. Well, hey, Labor Day is rapidly approaching, people, and the Major League Baseball games are starting to count now. The St. Louis Cardinals, they're done. The Redbirds are about as healthy as a Gulf Coast oil-soaked seagull. Right about, let's say, now. St. Louis is done, so I don't know if I'm going to talk about Major League Baseball futures anymore, but the weekend wraps up with the Los Angeles Dodgers and San Francisco, the Sunday night game of the week. The Los Angeles Dodgers are as done as the McCourt marriage is. Man, it's an ugly divorce. But San Francisco is not, and San Diego starting to feel the pressure a little bit. Colorado not done yet. They've got a big series this weekend, and the Boston Red Sox take on the Chicago White Sox. Battle of the Sox. Manny Ramirez back to face Boston one more time. Should be a good time this weekend. Great time of the year to be a sport fan, and props to the Sports Interaction lines makers for getting all those obscure Rhode Island college football games up on the board as well. Take a look at Virginia over Richmond. Richmond's former coach, now coaching the Virginia Cavaliers. Try to give you a lot of information in a short amount of time. I'm Gabriel Morency for Sports Interaction. May the winners be yours.